Hi, David.
Hey, pleasure to meet you.
Thanks, firstly, for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast and for my channel.
Of course, it's a real pleasure.
So I've gone through your profile. I can see you're doing great work. So I thought to tell about your work to my audience.
Okay.
So can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Oh, sure. So I'm Dave Aronchick. I've done both consumer and enterprise software throughout my career. I've worked at Microsoft and AWS and Google and Chef and some other folks as well. I'm now doing, my career basically took a particular turn when I was the first non-founding PM for Kubernetes, and I led that for a bunch of years on behalf of Google. And then I started, while I also was at Google, I started a machine learning platform called Kubeflow, and which has been pretty successful as well. And in both cases, we kept seeing the same problem crop up over and over again. And that problem was, well, this is great if I'm in a single data center, but the moment I need to go to multiple zones, multiple regions, multiple clouds, multiple data centers, whatever it might be, that's where things start to get very complicated. And so what we did was we have built a brand new project called Bacalhau. That's Bacalhau. And backed it with our commercial company, Expanso. And it is designed to give you similar Kubernetes-like deployment or Spark or Hadoop-style deployment, except instead of being in a single zone, it makes it very easy to do things cross-zone, cross-region, cross-cloud. So it's not a replacement for any of those platforms, but it's very much a complement to them. So if you have things that are all over the world, or you have things that are multi-zone or whatever, we can help you manage jobs across them.
So how usually it works?
So the idea is like you might have virtual machines or devices or things like that nearby where you're creating data, right? It could be maybe you're a company and you're like, okay, well, I need to be in multi-zone because Amazon tells me to be multi-zone, right? Because any single zone can go down. So what does that mean? Well, it means you should put the same resources in multiple locations. But then it becomes a challenge. Like, how do you keep those resources up to date? How do you make sure that you know which application is running on them? What we do is we provide a way to communicate a network across those various zones. And so all you have to do is put our agent in each of those places. So you can either have its own dedicated VM, or you can put it on the virtual machines that are in those locations or devices or whatever it might be. And then you can talk to the entire network at the same time and say, okay, I'd like to run this log processing job, or I'd like to run this machine learning job, or I'd like to run this container or whatever it is over there. Our system, our network that you've now set up, will reach out and find that in the network, run the job there locally without the data ever moving, and then tell you, okay, the job's done, what would you like to do? And so we can kind of do it from there. It's all self-hosted. There's no SaaS component to this. This is all something you spin up and manage yourself. The code is open source. The binaries are not. Binaries are commercial. So if you want to use our pre-built binaries, you have to talk to us to form a relationship. But we're very much an open source project, and if you want to fork our code and use it without our trademark, and join our community, we would love that.
So mainly the global companies will benefit from this.
Yeah, I mean, what I like to say is if you have more than 2 locations, or you're generating more than about 10 gigabytes of data on a regular basis, you're more than likely, need some help. And the reason I say those two things, again, it's not necessarily a global company. If you're a good company today who wants to have 3 nines of uptime, you have to be in multiple zones because all the major clouds, they don't offer more than two nines of availability for a single zone. Um, uh, which is fine. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do because you're supposed to spread out. So even if you're a modest sized company, you could absolutely be in multiple zones if you want good uptime. Or if you're generating a lot of data, you're generating logs, you're generating video, you're generating all these things, normally that you just take and dump in a data lake. When it starts to get to 10, 100 gigabytes, somewhere in that range, the time it takes to move the data becomes really significant, let alone the cost in doing so. And so what we can do is we can help you take action and be thoughtful about that data before you even move it. Does that make sense?
So how effective and how accurate this is?
Sorry, what is it?
How effective and how accurate this tool will be?
How accurate is the tool? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, how accurate and how effective the tool will work for the process that any business needs.
Well, so at the end of the day, we can guarantee within whatever version of consensus you would like to achieve a certain level, right? So if you say, hey, you know what? I don't care if there's a network partition, once a day. I want to make sure this job gets there. We will stay up and ensure by queuing it on either side that this will get there. The moment that that comes back, we have like rich queuing things. So you can say, hey, you know what? I can't see these machines right now, but I know they're there, so I'm just going to schedule to that. And we could do that. We support any kind of job, could be Docker or WASM or binaries. Like it's just completely up to you to run the job. And so as far as the accuracy of the job, what we do is we run exactly what you tell us to run. If your job isn't accurate, we can't make it accurate. But what we can tell you is explicitly that we know exactly what you told us to run, and we can tell you whether or not you ran it.
So can we call it as automation?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a lot of the complicated things like DevOps and other things like that are involved in things like this. And at the end of the day, DevOps is a great example where you might have a CI/CD pipeline that you want to roll out to the world, but you may not have connectivity to all these various locations, and we can help you take that connectivity.
I'm a DevOps engineer as well.
Okay, well there you go. So yeah, I mean you know the pain, right? Like imagine you have your CI/CD pipeline in whatever Jenkins or CloudBees or BuildKite or whatever it might be, and you've now created your artifact at the end of this. How do you take that and deploy it to these various locations? Well, a lot of times people have like really complicated scripts. They might like have the AWS CLI or the G-Cloud CLI or Azure CLI. They may put it into a bucket or things like that. And it's this really janky process to take these artifacts that you've now built and roll them out. And you don't know that they've gotten there. A platform like ours can make it really easy to say, okay, I'm just handing this to everything. You make sure that the job gets there and tell me when it's done. And we can do that for you very, very easily.
And what kind of services that can be managed and used, or the resources that can be used with this platform?
So our agent is just a Go binary. So it runs on literally everything, ARM and Mac and Windows and yada, yada, yada. The specific jobs that you can run, you can do in any way, right? So, like you could run a Docker container, or you could run WASM, or you could run any binary that's already installed on the node. All of that is possible for you right now. So it really is up to you to decide what to do. And in a lot of cases, so we have a lot of conversation around things like videos and are doing video processing and things like that, where you might have 15,000 cameras spread all around the city. and you want to collect those video streams, those cameras are often locked down. What we can do is we can run machines nearby those cameras, and then instead of having to run our agent on the camera itself, those cameras can stream into a local VM, do some processing on that, and then only move some of the data back to a central authority. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to run on the device itself. It can also run nearby.
How many users you have?
Well, so it's an open source project, so all we can really track is how many people download in a lot of ways. We have a number of commercial clients. Right now we're in use in the U.S. Navy and Lockheed Martin and other folks like that. And then, we see tens of thousands of downloads of our CLI every month. But at the end of the day, we don't really know, because it is open source, and so people can, download and fork the code and things like that. So we see a lot of activity, but I can't tell you a specific number. We just don't have the ability to track it, unfortunately.
You have worked in multiple companies and multiple projects in multiple roles. So can I say all those experiences are making you to do this today?
Oh, for sure. Like I absolutely, I would not have done this project specifically unless I had seen this specific pain inside of places like Google and Amazon and Microsoft. Like the reality is that this is being very much informed by retail folks and transportation folks and manufacturing folks and all those various people I saw at those companies. That helped inform a lot about what I see here. And we're really trying to fill a gap that platforms and companies previously just didn't have the ability to, or those platforms didn't do. Not because they couldn't, just because they weren't focused on that.
So with this platform, a network can be managed and can be operated. So what kind of sizes, I mean, what size companies can use this?
Well, so we charge on a per node basis. So if you have a small number of nodes out there, it's not going to cost you very much at all. And like I said, it totally depends on whether or not you want to be in multiple zones at the same time. If you do, then I would say that, like, no matter how small you are, we can be a benefit. Because at the end of the day, it is challenging to be in multiple places. Networks are just not built for that right now. And that's very much what we are built for and what we're trying to solve for.
But how you are able to put all together?
How are we able to put what together? So, like, to get our network going, it's very, very, very simple. On one machine, you start a single binary. You just spin it up, you run it, it works. On the second machine, you say, go talk to that first machine, and you point it at that machine. And that can be over a public network or a private network. It's up to you. But that's all that's required. Now, if you want to do it, you can do credentials and other things like that, pre-shared secrets and all that kind of stuff, if that's something you require as well. But at the base level, that's all that's necessary to get going.
So how it works for the big scale companies?
So with big scale companies, you can kind of take two different patterns. Pattern one is you have a global network that does everything at once. So you can say, okay, because our network has the ability to partition and separate and all that kind of stuff. Or you can have many networks. Either way works. And so, like, you could have multiple networks, even on a single machine, totally separated and isolated. It really, our network's very flexible. You can do whatever you like in order to make it possible to connect these things together. But like I said, a lot of this comes down to the topology that you have as a, end user, as a DevOps engineer, how you want this to be. Do you want it to be isolated? Do you want it to be, things like that? We can do that. And what I like to say is, like, a good mapping for this is thinking about like the number of Kubernetes clusters you have, or the number of Spark clusters you have, or the number of Swarm clusters you have, whatever it might be. The reason that you end up having all those usually is because each of those divisions inside a big company want isolation between them for whatever reason, because of regulatory concerns or because of organizational concerns or because of data concerns, whatever. You're going to want that. Probably you will want the same number of independent networks for a platform like ours. It doesn't have to be. There's lots of ways you could have more networks on this side and less networks on that side, or vice versa. But like, that's a pretty good rule of thumb.
And it works for multiple cloud service providers.
Yeah, all we require is a VM and an IP address. That's it. So as long as you can spin those up, it works great.
There must be a strong reason or strong motivation for you to start this, right? So there must be a particular industry problem that you might have solved that maybe made you to do this. So what is that and how complicated that was?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that we had we had started this overall architecture towards what we call compute over data. While I was still at Protocol Labs, which is the company behind things like IPFS and Filecoin and so on, where we saw this real problem around distributed data and the fact that data was growing so much faster than networking. Um, the truth is that after we started to look at it, we realized that this need was much larger than the overall IPFS and Filecoin communities. And so it became a challenge to say, well, geez, how are we going to get this out to the world where you may not have any kind of Web3 or any kind of IPFS association. You just want to manage distributed compute and manage distributed data. And that's very, very much what we leaned into. So because we had so much demand from customers and end users to do this in a super broad way, we wanted to, spin this out into its own company. Now, I'll be honest with you. This is now my fourth startup. I did not think that I was going to go back and do the startup world again. But here I am. And it's just because there was such a huge demand that I felt like somebody had to step in and do it.
So tell me about your team.
So we're really lucky. We have a really experienced team. We have folks from all my previous experiences, folks from Google, Microsoft, Amazon, McKinsey, Dell. We're not an enormous company, but we're getting there. And we just have tons and tons of distributed computing experience. And that's really the most important thing. Like, distributed computing is not new. There's 40 years, 50 years of experience understanding things like distributed consensus, network partitioning, CAP theorem. Like, it just goes on and on. But at the end of the day, this idea that like, hey, I have this stuff spread all out, and I need to make sure that at any given time, there's a source of truth, and that, when things conflict, we can resolve it. That's very, very much what we are all about, and so that's what we're trying to really lean into. We want to use the experience that we have on our team to make everyone's lives with distributed compute much easier.
And how it will be adopted to the consistent change and the constant change that is happening in the technology.
Yeah, so what we do is, like I said, I was worked on Kubernetes for a long time, and I have a real set of thoughts around what Kubernetes looks like, and how to make Kubernetes successful over its life. And the way Kubernetes was successful was because it really focused on what it did well. It figured out how to do distributed computing. It figured out that it wasn't going to figure out networking. It wasn't going to figure out disk. It wasn't going to figure out, isolation, yada, yada, yada. We have the same philosophy. We're going to be really good in distributed computing, but over, wide networks. And we're going to make sure that we're not going to be opinionated about these things. So if you want to run a very basic command or you want to run the most advanced ML model, you can do anything along that spectrum. And our job is to stay out of your way so that you can do that.
So how will be the user interface?
So we offer rich interfaces across the board. There's a command line interface. We have a web interface, and we have webhooks that you can build a platform. And we're just about to announce version 1.4, which has even more rich HTTP APIs, so you can build on top of it.
So which is mostly used?
Right now, it's the CLI, the command line interface. Most people will write a job using YAML, and then they'll just submit the job, and it just works.
So so there is no particular limitation that these number of resources can be managed with this platform.
Well, no, it absolutely. You can okay, yes. You can do it on ARM and Mac and Windows and Linux and la la la. So you can do all of those things. The funny part about your statement is the reason I reacted so quickly is when you start it, you can actually be very, very specific and say, hey, this particular job only has access to one CPU or only 4 gigabytes of RAM or whatever. So we lock it down, but there's nothing inherent in the platform that restricts it at all.
And what is the processing time?
It totally depends on the job. When we did, volume simulation against this, we only saw about a 200 millisecond overhead in scheduling the job versus running the job natively on yourself. So whatever it is, it's going to be long dwarfed by the amount of data in the job itself.
So which industry you suggest that need to use this platform? That will be very
Yeah,
efficiently helpful for them.
Yeah, like I said, the people who are going to need it first are the ones where networking is a problem, where they're generating a lot of data, where they are spread all over the place. So if you're in transportation or agriculture or retail or manufacturing or transportation, right? All of those folks are generating too much data and they're generating it in a distributed way. That said, I was just on the phone yesterday with a financial services firm who's generating 3.5 petabits of data a year of log data and anomaly things, and they don't want to move that data. It's slow, it's insecure, it runs into regulatory and PII risk, and so we're going to be working with them on an example as well. So, there's just a ton of different ways to go out and attack this.
So how it can be used? The enterprises will be having a constant change that is happening. So how that can be how that can be resolved, or can be they can find the solution with this.
Yeah. So what I like to say is if you are looking at your bill and it's big around data, then we should have a conversation. Or if you're looking at your applications and you're saying, geez, I'd love to do more things with this data, but it simply takes too long for me to be notified that something is happening around the data, or for me to get insight into the data. In either case, that's where we can help. And what we do is you just start, we, draw a bunch of boxes on the board and wire them together and say, okay, how does this thing talk to this thing over here? And you say, oh, well, today all the data over here needs to move over here before you can do something. What we say is, no, why don't you instead just move the command over here and then you can take action. And usually people can get going just from that, and they don't have to do that with a conversation. Like, our platform is so easy to set up and use. You can start messing around with it yourself.
So managing multiple resources and multiple applications or multiple things in multiple locations is a very challenging thing. So you're trying to solve this problem. Uh, so in your complete experience, what that problem that made you really took a lot of time to solve.
I mean, I think one of the things that is the most challenging is, like, there's the reality is there's no shortcutting the hard problems of distributed computing. There are so many people who have tried to solve this distributed consensus problem over time. The best thing you can do is avoid trying to reinvent the wheel, and instead adopt the best practices that are out there and implement them one at a time. Don't try and take it all on at once. Just implement something, start, then go next, and go next. And every time you see someone say, you know what, I don't need to reinvent distributed, I don't need distributed computing. I'm just going to have a bash script that crawls over 10 different resources and does something on each one. I guarantee I'll be like, yeah, you know what, enjoy, but you're going to be calling me in, a couple months, because all of a sudden something's going to get out of sync, or the network went down, or you don't know what happened, or whatever it is. These distributed computing problems just happen over and over again. I wanted to come in and solve every distributed computing problem at once, but the reality is it's just a really hard problem, and especially now in our global world, and we really haven't even started to get global. It just becomes harder and harder.
So usually what kind of problem that you hear?
Um, it's the problems where people lean in, like I said, is they're spending too much, either time or money, moving and storing data, or they are not able to take action over their data as fast as they would like. They say, oh, something bad is happening here, but I'm not sure what. So I need to, log into the machine manually and do this particular query, and so on and so forth. Um, take video, for example. A lot of times people like take entire raw streams of video and they throw them away because it's too much video for any one company or any one endpoint to publish and process. And so that's something we can help with, right out of the box. So yeah, there's just a lot of different opportunities here, and what I like to do is we just help companies move faster, more securely, and more reliably.
So most of the business owners they do not want get into much into technology, but without technology they cannot run their business. But they have to learn how actually technology things
Yeah,
works
yeah,
for
yeah.
their business. So how do you convince them, or how do you tell them that this is going to solve their problem and the advantages that they get
Yeah,
if they use this?
absolutely. I mean, the truth is like, I don't even have to convince them because they already know the problems. I say, go look at your bill. Just look at your bill. Don't understand what you're spending your money on. Is your bill too much storing? Is your bill too much moving data? Is your bandwidth cost too high? Like, those problems, every business owner understands that. Then I say, are you getting the information you need as fast as you would like to get it in order to be smarter about your business, right? Were you able to detect security breaches? Were you able to detect that users were repeatedly doing interesting things that you wanted to lean into? Uh, is your application getting to the places where your users are? Like, these are problems that they can understand even without understanding the underlying technical reasons why. And a platform like ours can absolutely help them solve those problems.
And how is going to be the responsibility of the person who is using this? for the company?
Well, so they're typically going to be in those DevOps roles, the head of data roles, the head of IT roles, the head of security roles. Like the problems that we help them solve for, those are the ones where their responsibilities normally will lie, and where they will feel they will get better when they implement it with a platform like ours.
And what I can do as a DevOps engineer with your tool?
Well, like I said, anywhere you are using Bash or cron or anything like that, over to control many things out there, like you can use us as a replacement, or at least a complement. It doesn't necessarily need to replace anything. I'm very, very big on not ripping and replacing almost anything. Um, we just happen to be a great solution for, complementing that and making your lives easier.
I'll tell my employer about this.
That'd be amazing. I would love to talk to them.
Sure. And what do you say to the developers and the engineering experts who will be watching and listening to you now?
What do I say to them about our platform or just generally?
Yeah, about your platform.
Well, like I said, what I want to say is if it doesn't feel like you can adopt or try out our platform with very little work, then that's a failure on us. Like it really shouldn't be very much at all. If you're already building a container, then you can probably adopt our platform more easily, as easy, if not easier, than Kubernetes. And that kind of stuff makes it really, really powerful. So that's what I would say. We can get going very, very quickly on something like that. If it doesn't feel like it's easy, then I want you to come talk to us. Come jump in our Slack. Come, to our GitHub repo. Come, email me directly. I don't care. Because it really shouldn't be much. There's not a lot to learn here in order to get it going quickly.
And apart from this, you do other things as well. Can you also share that?
Other things at work?
Yeah, other projects as well.
Well, I'm CEO of the company, so that takes up most of my time. Managing, making sure the team's on track, making sure our plans are on track, fundraising, customer meetings, all that kind of good stuff. I rely on the team to deliver the platform. It's just my job to do meetings like this and brief a whole lot of people and let them know the stuff that's out there. Like I said previously, I was lead product manager for Kubernetes. I started Kubeflow, the machine learning platform. I've started several other small projects, the same project and a project around specification enforcement called ML Spec. I just fundamentally believe there's a huge opportunity for us to make development and management of software workloads much easier for people so that you can focus on the more interesting bits of the overall platform.
And how you are enjoying, this role, and, talking with, business owners and, trying to solve their business problems.
I mean, I love it because it's a wonderful experience to like really solve someone's problem directly. And it's rare, right? A lot of times when we are working on things, it feels very abstract. Like I'm not sure exactly what I'm working on, why I'm doing this, so on and so forth. If you can help directly solve someone's problem, that's wonderful. And if you can build a company that solves people's problems, so much the better.
So, do you have anything to say to the Vice President of Amazon Web Services?
Well, so it's funny because I know, a lot of those folks because of my experience in the technology industry and, using, or when I worked there as well. I think they are all of these folks, and don't get me wrong, AWS is amazing, but the other clouds are really great too. keep doing what you're doing. You're abstracting and simplifying so many people's lives. I think that's fantastic. But very much we are in discussions with all these clouds to help them augment their platforms with software like ours, so that customers can adopt and bridge and pull all these pieces together. Because no matter what, no matter how much any one cloud says, well, you should be all in on our cloud, it's almost impossible to get to 100%. Almost. And the moment you're not on a single cloud, that's when it's nice to go to other places.
So at last, what is your observation as a business owner about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously once you sent over the notification, I went and looked at a bunch of things. I think you do great stuff, just great stuff, and you've built this big community and so on and so forth. I think folks like you are really the new way that communication happens. Previously it used to be a single person at an industry, would send out press releases, so on and so forth. I think that just doesn't work anymore. You need to have ways for end users to be represented and communities to be represented. And so the fact that you go out and find people and talk to them directly, I think is super powerful.
And I have done masters in software engineering, also bachelors in computer science and engineering. Right now, I'm working as DevOps engineer for a UK company. So that's my full-time role. Apart from that, I'm interviewing experts like you who are already in the industry, who are solving different business problems, who are, trying to understand the global technology and trying to fix their problems and helping the enterprises. So me talking with business leaders like you, what I'm going to learn and how this experience is going to be helpful for me in upcoming days.
Absolutely. I mean, again, even if you didn't have a podcast, I would love to have conversations like this. I do have conversations like this at conferences and one-on-one, because I love to hear what problems people are having on the ground right now and, trying to, solve people's problems, like I said earlier.
Great. Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your
Of
permission?
course. Of course. Absolutely. I would love that.
Also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Absolutely. You have my permission.
Great. Thanks again, David, for your valuable time and sharing about your work and, answering to some of my questions and sharing your experiences.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.